So, hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, good evening, and wherever you are, as per your time zones. I know that many of you have been eagerly waiting for this webinar series of ours, and we are going to start off with a very high note. And uh, and uh, and we have a list of eminent speakers with us today, and that is something we are looking forward to have a sort of very good interactive session, learning from the experts, and uh, and without further delay, I guess our participants may get to see the recording of this session, and they can also keep joining in between. I know there have been many registrations for this session as well, uh, and uh, and I can better understand that why it is so, because we are going to discuss the international perspective from the horse's mouth. You can say how the practices are being adopted globally, from policy, from the documentation side to the shop floor level. So with this, let me introduce our first speaker. Who is Zakia Kassam. He is the chair of the ISO Environmental Management Technical Committee for the 2024-26 term, and the president of Air Environment Canada, a second generation family owned environment consulting company. Zakia has more than 20 years of professional experience spanning the energy, infrastructure, and environmental sectors, and extensive experience applying ISO standards in different contexts. Zakia holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Chemical Engineering from McGill University, a Master of Engineering in Environmental Engineering from the University of Calgary, MBA from the University of Toronto, and a Masters of Law in Environmental and Natural Resources Law from the University of London. And I think that the list is going to go further on down the line, because learning is a never-ending process. And with that, our next speaker, I would like to also welcome her to join us in today's panel, Ms. Amira. Ms. Amira is a sustainability and ESG specialist with a deep expertise in reporting, sustainable finance, and risk management, guiding organizations in integrating sustainability into core business operations while aligning the global framework such as the SDGs. She has worked extensively in banking sector to develop tools for assessing ESG-related financial risks, and has led renewable energy projects including solar PV and green hydrogen for decarbonization. So, with a master's in renewable energy engineering and a doctorate in business administration, Amira combines academic rigor with practical impact, further strengthened by the certification from UNIDO and RENAC, and recognition by the IPCC as an African climate change expert. So, in her current role as a head of sustainability, she leads large-scale projects, engages diverse stakeholders, and drives strategies that balance environment, social, and economic goals. So, welcome, Amira. And now, I'd just like to also invite our representative from our academia partner, Rifa International University, Mr. Khwaja Asif Mushtaq. He's a seasoned HR management consultant, ISO expert, and system design specialist with over 20 years of experience. Presently, he's working as a head of learning and development at Rifa International University, and also the chair at the National Standards Body of DSPC on occupational health and safety and business collaborative relationship management. So I welcome all of you once again, and I be jumping in between the questions from our, I can say, the super ladies who have been raising the flags high about sustainability in different regions across the world. So let me start, Zakia, with you with a simple question that if a company wants to be ESG ready in 2025, so which ISO standards form the core stack across E, S, and G, and how do they map to ISSB, GRI, and CSRD? So over to you, Zakia, and we'll be looking forward to learn from you and discuss further.
Thanks so much, Assad, and thanks for having me here. So I think this is a really interesting question, and I think it's one that the industry is grappling with. And I think it very much depends on two things. So the first is, what are the objectives of the organization in following a particular standard, and the second is, in some jurisdictions, conformance or compliance with certain requirements or certain suite of standards is a mandatory requirement. So if we remove the regulatory piece for a second, there's a series of standards that are focused on disclosures, and then there's a series of standards that are focused on management systems. So I think it depends on, is there a desire to show and disclose information and to have that checklist, or is the primary focus on the management of impacts? And it's not to say that there isn't an overlap between the two, but I think the focus of these standards are different. And what I sometimes see is people following a disclosure-based regime just because they want to be able to say publicly that I have followed the GRI standards or another set of disclosure standards, but it can become overwhelming to determine which GRI indicators do I use, for example, and it fundamentally depends on the concept of materiality. And that's actually the first step in the ISO standards. So whether it's an ISO 14001 environmental management system or an ISO 50001 energy management system or even ISO 9001 quality management system, the very first step is to understand what are all of the aspects that we are having, the interactions with the environment, the interactions with energy, depending on which standard you're having, and then determining which ones are significant. What's my significant environmental aspects? What's my significant energy usage? So I think that there certainly is a degree of interoperability between the different standards, but I think a core question for an organization making the determination is, what is my objective? And having a management system is very much focused about, let me understand what my significance is and manage those particular impacts and continually improve, whereas some of the other standards are focused on, here's the list of indicators we want you to disclose against. And then to overlay the regulatory requirements on that, we're seeing that in certain industries, there are regulatory obligations to generate or to demonstrate conformance against that. But interoperability is there with many of the standards. So ISSB, which references GHGP is very much aligned to the ISO 14064, and there's interoperability between them. And I think we're going to see that increasingly into the future.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting some pertinent points, because that's the major question once anyone is trying to look into and adopt certain best practices. So now this brings another question in my mind, and I can put it up for Ms. Amira, if you want to respond to that. Where do we start basically? As interoperability has been discussed, and the intention and objective of adopting certain set of reporting requirements and disclosures. So if a company wants to begin ESG this quarter, for example, so what are the first three steps you would take, and who needs to be in the room for that? Amira, over to you.
Okay. So I think that we just need to have the mindset of starting lean and moving smart. First, the company needs to appoint an ESG champion, someone who can own the process, even if it's on a part-time basis. And then they need to bring a cross-functional squad, because the sustainability and the ESG reporting is not a single-faced process. It's actually embedded in every single part of the business. So you need someone from the finance, the operations, the HR, supply chain, you name it. Because it doesn't happen in silos, it happens across the departments. And I think a good starting point would be defining the why. Why are we doing this? Is it for compliance? Is it for investment? Is it for the internal culture or reputation? And this basically sets the roadmap of where we will start to go. And then I believe we can start with a quick risk scan. What's the most urgent things in our sector? What imposes the biggest risks to our operations? Is it energy use, labor, environmental laws depending on the industry and the country that you're operating in. And finally, deciding on the final format. Don't go for a huge format, even if it's a 3-page, 5-page ESG report. In the beginning, it's better than nothing. Start light and keep iterating as we go. Because at the end, the ESG reporting is not a hit and run situation. It's a complete journey, and actually, it's a learning process. Every time you will start to do your reporting, you'll discover new loopholes, you will see new risks, and at the end of the day, the business changes, the environment around us changes. So today's risks might not be the same the next
Mm.
year and the one after.
Yeah, you have touched upon very important points, like to start off with simple steps, baby steps, you can say. So, like again, jumping over to Zakia on this, like so so according to you, Zakia, like what are the top three implementation pitfalls like you see, especially for SMEs in emerging markets, and how can like leadership sequence adoption, like from which standard to which standard, starting like there have been certain standards which have provided the base into the market, like you have ISO 9000, and then quality management systems, and then building upon environmental management systems. So, what sequence is the best fit solution so far you have seen or discussed within your committee meetings as well?
So I think what Amira mentioned, I'm going to build off of it for two of the big pitfalls that I often see. So one is biting off more than an organization can chew, where there's a desire to show excellence across everything, and then with taking the most comprehensive set of indicators and assuming that I'm going to demonstrate what platinum practice is. And then it can be overwhelming for an organization because they don't know where to start, and budgetary constraints come into play. So I have seen large capital projects, for example, that have set out at the outset certain sustainability frameworks and certifications that they wanted. But then when it came to the actual cost of the capital project and budget cuts that needed to be made, everything that was sustainability related was the first thing on the table to get removed from the capital budget. So I think what Amira said about starting at a size that is reasonable and appropriate to your organization is really important. And then the second thing that I think, excuse me, Amira said that was really important.
You can take a break, no issue. Yeah.
Was the integration across divisions. So sometimes I've also seen organizations that have an ESG department or an environmental department, but that department is divorced from the capital planning of an organization or the budgeting of an organization. So it's a small team, and it's assumed that this team is going to carry everything ESG related, but ESG has to be incorporated across the organization, and it's why we see such a strong focus on top management and making sure that the top management endorses everything. And then the third one is when it comes to significance tests, I've seen organizations understand the value of engaging with stakeholders, but they assume that the engagement with the stakeholders is the only way to determine significance. And you could have an operation that an organization has. So for example, an organization that I was interacting with, one of their risks was diesel spills from their operations. But the general public doesn't understand the nature of the operations or the technical functioning of the organization. So if you ask them what's the most significant environmental aspects for you, the public is basing it on what they see in the media, but not necessarily understanding the operations of the organization. So understanding your operations and your risks and your interactions with the environment is really important to determining what are those significant environmental aspects. Your second question, Assad, about which standards to use to enter into the sphere. I think the management system standards are very complementary, and they're designed to be complementary within the ISO system. So you could start off with an ISO 9001 quality management system, and part of your quality is, am I delivering my goods with the appropriate expectations of my consumers? And consumers now have expectations in relation to sustainability. So it's very easy to build in your sustainability indicators into your quality management systems because it's an expectation of your interested parties, and that's a concept in the standards. Same thing with ISO 14001. So when you're looking at what are my environmental management aspects, energy is a component of the environmental interactions because of the air pollutions, because of the greenhouse gas, because of resource efficiencies. So you can start off with ISO 14001 as your broad concept and build your energy management system integrated within that. And I think it's really important to do, as Amira said, is start off with something that is manageable and then expand as your organization matures and as you get used to the processes of auditing and corrective action as part of the continual improvement cycle.
Yeah, so I think like the keyword or key takeaway, what we can say is like focusing on a sort of integrated management systems approach as well. And you rightly said that you only chew what you can eat, in fact, initially. So without burdening the top management and be realistic in target setting. So yeah, that's something very much important in terms of maintaining the like sort of credibility in the market. But with this, like with the adoption of standards comes the tracking of the matrices. So if I can ask you, Mira, that if there is a specific list which you can in terms of practical ESG matrices any company can track with basic tools like no fancy softwares. So what does like good look like in that context?
Okay, so if like we're gonna think about an ESG starter kit, we just need to take it a step back and speak about the materiality. Materiality shows where you actually stand. And we don't need to think about it as like a thesis. We can think about it as a workshop. And I've seen many businesses find the real issues through these interactive workshops because no one will know the issues with the process more than the people who are stuck in it. So get your ESG team in one room, get your top management, and like start to ask them one question: what could hurt or help our businesses the most from an environmental, social, or governance angle in the next 12 to 18 years? And then you can start to have a little bit of guidance. And if we're speaking
Hmm.
about the basics, um, usually start with something small, something that is easy to measure and that can be easily quantified and tracked. So, for example, if we're speaking about the environmental, track your electricity and fuel bills. This will help us track the energy use. Track the waste disposal, like the volume or the cost of waste removed. The water bills, whether it's the monthly in consumption in the headquarters or in the factories or like whatever operations that you're carrying out. And
Yeah.
definitely you have more implications for specific industries. Um, and for social, you can start with your employee turnover rate. You can start with the number of training hours per employee, the ones that you provide, and do they actually take the ones that you provide, or are they reluctant to take these trainings? And I believe also another one, a good metric is the gender diversity in leadership. So this is the basics for the environmental and social. And if we're gonna speak about governance, I think it's more about transparency. So speak about the number of board meetings held, disclose what could be disclosed, speak about the number of policies reviewed, updated, what changed across the business year, and also report all the whistleblower or the ethics cases that has been there. At the end of the day, if you want to define good, it's about transparency and being consistent, not about being perfect. We just need to show numbers that are real, that shows the effort. And if we're taking a small step this year, next year it will be two, it will be three, and it's all about that accumulative part. And I think also a good trick on finding like the best ESG measures is looking at your competition, because your competition will be at the same country, at the same industry, and they will most probably be having similar issues if you choose the right competition. And this could be like a nice baseline to start knowing where to look, where to go, and then start building it off from your own company culture and issues that you raised in materiality assessment.
Yeah, that is something like so like just to be very like specific, as you have mentioned one or two very important pertinent points, that there could be like 8 to 10 ESG topics which matter most. So like where to start from? So you just mentioned that one can focus on basically looking into your competitors or your prevailing rules regulations. So is it what you alluded to?
Yes, I think that, and it would be also nice to build up on the efforts that the company has been doing already. So, in a lot of cases, when you go and see the business, they have been doing some of the sustainability efforts, but it wasn't defined like that earlier. And especially in factories and in manufacturing, you find them, they already comply on several ISO certifications. So just give the people a head start that you guys are already on board. What we're doing is building up on the efforts and show them the value. And I think this would be a good start, giving them a position where we're not starting from scratch. We already have some things that's done. And like we have a lot of mapping right now. So whether you can map these ISO standards they complied with to the GRI, and they can start with that and build on which GRI sections they're working on. Um, Check the standards that are based for their industry, and this could all be a very nice starting point for the whole ESG and sustainability reporting process.
Yeah, so that is something which I would just like to point out over here at this juncture, that you might have witnessed both Amira, Zakia, and Asif Saab, that like with the like stringent requirements coming for CBAM, so like there is a quick impetus or inertia you can see in the market coming up for these sort of sustainability reporting requirements, and similarly the critical mass which is in the form of people. Although there are many softwares, AI generated reporting patterns, standardized versions are there, but at the end of the day, it's the man behind the gun, and which looks into different perspectives. So I'll come to that question as well, whether you agree, or that's what is the trigger between because the standards are mostly mandatory to be adopted in terms of ISO. So certification. This brings a question towards Zakia, that certification versus conformance. So what is when is formal certification essential, and when is internal alignment sufficient, like cost, credibility, assurance, etc.?
So I think there's kind of three tiers, and I'll start off with the ISO 14001 on the environmental management systems. So what ISO 14001 says is that you can do a self-declaration of conformance. You can have a third party come in and audit you, or you can have a certified EMS where the certification is provided by an organization that is accredited by a national standards body. So there is some legislation around the world, depending on what jurisdiction that you're at, where the legislation actually will require you to have a certified EMS, where it's certified in accordance with an entity that is accredited by the national standards bodies. So if there's a regulatory impetus, that becomes you just have to do it. You have to get the certification. We're seeing this in this GHG space as well. So there's some regulations around the world that are referencing the ISO 14064 Part 3 standard about validation and verification of environmental statements, as well as the ISO 14065, which is entities that are performing the validation and verification activities. And that's how regulators have a degree of confidence that the reports that they are receiving, whether it's on environmental management and performance, or whether it is on greenhouse gas performance and greenhouse gas statements, that those are statements that they can have confidence in without needing to having a massive regulatory burden to check those statements themselves. But I think for an organization that doesn't have regulatory requirements, the first step is to check yourself and do the internal auditing of your system against whatever standard that it is that you are pursuing. And I think even without having the regulatory impetus to get the certification, when an organization is ready to get the certification, it's a good test on the robustness and the rigor of their environmental management system, or their GHG statements, or whatever environmental information or ESG information that they are presenting, because the scrutiny that you get from an external auditor is higher than what you will see from an internal auditor. So it automatically drives excellence by having that external set of eyes come in and audit your ESG program, your GHG program, or your 14,001 program, or your quality management system program as well.
Yeah, I think like we also have Mr. Asif as well. So since you are also like chairing one of the committee, Asif Saab in Pakistan, on occupational health safety aspects. So whatsoever we have discussed in terms of adoption in context of ESG, and since like ESG Nexus is also like has carried out an ESG audit for RIFA and university, and you have also facilitated that. So what is the like practical implications in context of starting off within the academic sector or industrial sector? So what priority from the academia side you have in terms of adoption of standards, or according to your committee which you are like heading over here in BSTCA?
Thank you, Asad. Actually, in Pakistan, the ESG concept is newly. In last couple of years, government of Pakistan has taken few initiatives. Based on those initiatives, they came up with a few regulations, and even State Bank of Pakistan come up with the regulations and ease of loaning for the uh, green banking, and the ease of the loans for the organizations. And for the public sector organizations, government made the regulation to declare their ESG instead of CSR initiatives. That are actually the tipping points from where the people are noticing in the industry and academia that something is going to happen, and that is important. But actually, if we recall the recent COVID, in pandemic of COVID, uh, those organizations who developed their business continuity processes, they survived in that pandemic. And actually, the ISO have more than 54,000 standards and technical reports and specifications. And in all means, they are supporting actually the sustainability of the business, sustainability of the services, and the improvement of the quality. And definitely those all areas ultimately address the index that the SDGs of UNO are made. So I think at academic side, we are in a better situation since due to QS ranking, the mostly educational organization have established their quality departments, and due to quality departments, they are well aware of with the ISO 9001, with the ISO 21001, and in Pakistan we have the regulations. If I talk regarding the national standard body. We have the Act of Health and Safety Authority here, and we also have the Environment Protection Authority here in Pakistan. So by law, the ISO 45001 implementation and ISO 14001 implementation is mandatory for the industry, and that is actually a blessing. since these standards are on the basis of Annexure SL that I think Zakia addressed the structure of ISO 9001. As ISO 9001, in my personal being a student of ISO, is the mother of all standards. If any organization has ISO 9001 established there, then they are so easy for them to develop other standards compliance. In academia side, we have many universities having ISO 9001. In industry side, almost every registered industry is in struggle to have the like the environment standard qualification, like 45.1 qualification, and actually ISO standards are the basically pillars for the ESG compliance. So
Yeah, gotten well
all
noted, Asif Saab. Yeah, yeah, please continue. I think like you.
yeah, I said actually the ESG is based on six pillars. One is the ISO 14001, that is the environmental standard, which covers the environment and governance side as well. The second pillar is the ISO 45001 that relates to workers' well being. It addresses the uh, like social responsibility, sustainability, and the governance as well. And the third one is very important, that is the ISO 22301, that is the business continuity. It's actually addresses the resilience and recovery. It talks about the risk management, risk mitigation in advanced form. Then there is a fourth pillar, that is the ISO 37301, that is actually related to anti bribery, and that addresses the social issues and the business ethics, anti corruption areas. And you know that ESG actually drives from the European side, and they are actually driving force for the Asian country since they are the buyers and buyers of the products and services from the Asian countries. So they are driving force. The fifth one is the social responsibility standard, and the sixth one is the governance and accountability standard. Actually, on the basis of these six standards, if any organization works with true letter and spirit on these six standards, then there is no hindrance for the compliance beyond the delightness in ESG. So I think we are at the right track, and we are following
Okay.
these standards here. And obviously, the efforts related to ESG from the government and the private side no will make the efforts result in good fruit, inshallah.
Yeah, well noted, Asif Saab. This building upon your pillars stuff, it just diverts my attention towards like the most and tricky and difficult sort of segment to be covered. And I'm just going to put that question to Amira on that, which is pertaining to the supply chain and in context of scope 3. So like that's the biggest challenge for most of the enterprises industries everywhere. In any region you go, that is something where your value chain mapping and things are not it's a hard nut to crack. So what's a simple way to map key suppliers and estimate scope 3, like in terms of ISO guidance? Is there any guidance on that, or what learnings could be done we can get from there? And any one tip to get suppliers to cooperate as well?
Okay, so like definitely supply chain and like the whole scope 3 is like the elephant in the room when we speak about our carbon footprint, because it's easy to measure scope 1 and 2, but scope 3 is always outside the business borders and it's very hard to track, especially, and yet it's very significant because we found that it accounts almost to 70 to 80% of the actual emissions. And like a very nice trick that we can start with is seeing the top suppliers by spending and by volume. And then you can start to work on these top 10 suppliers and start asking them about their carbon footprint, about their certifications, if they had any audits. And you can even have it like a conversation with the supplier. A lot of them already started mapping out their scopes, and it is scope 3 for your business, but for his business, it's scope 1 and 2, so it's easier to calculate it on his side. And like choose the most significant suppliers so that when you figure out the numbers with them, these will be the most significant in your footprint calculations. Don't go behind the small and the scattered ones, because this is not the kind of effort that you want to spend in the beginning, and it will be definitely very frustrating. Of course, when it comes to ISO, I think Zakia would add much more, but I think the ISO 14064 and the GHG protocol for scope 3 are like a very good starting to follow. They have very clear categories, and it's very basic to calculate them. So, like, at the end, just open the conversation with the suppliers, make them understand that we're not judging, we're not here to point fingers. Instead, we're learning together, because this, yani, when we start to ask them these questions, they might be reluctant to collaborate together. So put it as working together. It's more of a teamwork. Offer them to share insights. If you have the capacity in your team, you can offer to help them a little bit, and also add for them recognition in your report, so they can feel valued and a part of the process. And I think this would be some good starters for scope 3. And another also hint is checking out the suppliers who already have sustainability report. Why start with one who's not educated at all? Start with one who's actually building a little bit of effort on his own, and then you can take it to the next step with him.
Yeah, like again, like you as you correlated elephant in the room with scope 3, so that is something like that is something which could be easily relatable. As you have just mentioned Zakia, so I can we can straight away go to Zakia about that, and after like she responds to scope 3 level of difficulty, or like this also brings a sort of question in my mind that since there are other reporting protocols which are developing their own, like you can say, the emission calculators. So, is there any consideration by ISO or the committee you are heading to develop certain easy to use calculation tools as well, which would be in conformance with other reporting standards, or like you can adopt as well from them, or they can adopt from you. So, is there anything being discussed on that? And your thoughts on scope 3 or elephant in the room, Zakia?
Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks, Assad. And I think everything that Amira said is absolutely accurate. I think in terms of ISO guidance, we do have a standard on GHG accounting for transport chain operations. It's ISO 14083, I believe it is. And so that provides guidance on how to deal with supply chains and from the transportation associated with supply chains. I think there's one or two additional things that I would mention in relation to scope 3 that I've done from a practical standpoint on projects. So one is is estimating, so where you don't have data directly from your your supplier, or you don't know what's happening downstream. Say, for example, with waste, we don't know what is happening with the waste, but we know the quantities of waste that we are generating, is calculation-based estimates to determine materiality so that you know where to prioritize your action. And so I have done for clients GHG reports where we start off with an estimate of scope 3 emissions, and we try and get the big ones. We assess the materiality, and then we start refining our data in subsequent years when we know that these are material ones, and we have to chase those to make sure that we know the quantities of certain types of waste, and that we know that the destination of waste. I think your second question, Asad, about the emissions factors. So ISO is deliberately in the space of providing the processes and the guidance with determining how do you collect data. So there's lots of guidance within the ISO system on robustness of data and auditability of data. I think it's really important to be careful when using standard templates or standard tools. And I see this often where individuals can expect that they can just take national emissions factors or databases that exist and apply them to their particular context. And I'll give you an example of the challenges even in Canada. So if you were to look at the national emissions factor associated with electricity production, depending on where you are in Canada, it's very different. So Quebec is predominantly hydropower. It's a completely renewable grid. The GHG emission factor is for our power is something like 0.006. It's a very, very small number. Whereas when you get into the prairies provinces in Alberta and Saskatchewan, you still have a dependency, even within our power system, on fossil fuels. And so you see something that is orders of magnitude higher at numbers that are, 1,000 times higher than what they would be in Quebec. So I think it's 0.6 tons or 600 kilograms per kilowatt, 600 grams per kilowatt hour as an example. So I think it's really important that the factors that are used, that there's an understanding of how does my location, my operations, my circumstances influence the determination of the data that I am using. And primary data is obviously the best source, and understanding the even if you're dealing with supply chains, what are they actually measuring, or even for your own operations, what am I actually measuring in my process that gives me that robustness of data, rather than leaning on emissions factors. There are cases where you're going to have to use emissions factors, like for airplane travel. We don't measure the emissions that airline industries do, but they're in those cases, when you're talking about your scope 3 emissions, and you're going to want to use emissions factors, but also understand which emissions factors. So high altitude impacts of GHG is very different from surface-based impacts of GHGs that are released. So there's adjustment factors that are associated with high altitude releases, for example. So there is absolutely guidance within the ISO system on things like transport operations and supply chains, and then the caution about using emissions factors without understanding to what extent do they apply to my particular circumstances.
Yeah, this is something like, again, as you have alluded to, like very pertinent points, emission factors and other aspects related to it. So it also brings another point which has to be looked into in terms of like data and assurances, in terms of evidence trails while going for compliance audits. So the procedures, logs, audits, so in this sense, we need to convince the client has to convince both the auditors and the investors. So in this context, uh, 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 what critical factors or critical mass or human factor has to be looked into, like this sort of certifications or the knowledge or what type of discipline is necessary for the persons to look into all these aspects.
So I think traceability is really important for when using any kind of standard and you're trying to demonstrate conformance. And that means understanding right from the identification of risks to being able to say, okay, I know these are my significant aspects. I am monitoring them. Here's my data associated with monitoring. And that data reinforces the fact that it is significant. And then when I start reducing my impact associated with that particular social factor, environmental factor, then I adjust my targets to make them more aggressive and to achieve that continual improvement. So I think the traceability throughout the whole process is critical for being able to demonstrate to an auditor that you've conformed to a particular standard and that you're implementing practices in the way that they should be. And then the second element is the primary data, which I think is getting better and better as technology evolves. You know, it used to be that 15 years ago, I would see a lot of reports that were PDF files or Word document files that would document calculations that were being done, and you would redo that paper-based report every year to demonstrate what your performance is. I think with the advances that we're seeing in data analytics and in information systems, the ability to demonstrate traceability and the ability to integrate into dashboards is becoming much more effective. And in fact, in some contracts where we're asking information from suppliers, we're seeing, instead of submit to me a report, just give me your data. Show me your data, because I can cut the data faster than you can, or in minutes, compared to receiving a static PDF document that you then need to read. So I think I'm very excited about the future as it relates to data and analytics, because I think that is revolutionizing the industry in a way that we haven't seen before, where we're getting out of that paper-based reporting, and it's improving the transparency of auditing as well.
Yeah, so as you rightly said, that the beauty in the simplicity, and the things really which matters at the end of the day are the numbers, rather than like putting infographics or too much fancy things into the reports, which might not be of any interest by any investor or like the other competitors even. Like I'll divert towards Amira. Since you are a practitioner, Amira, as well, and you have been deploying certain tools and ESG audits in different enterprises. So being a practitioner, so can you, for our audience and for participants, so can you share in 90 days like sort of success story, if you have a target of one quick win, which so what changed, how you did it, in one, and one number that proves it worked. So any story around that from your own experience and exposure?
We actually, it's nice to see how you have these quick wins, and sometimes even without any like major capex, because usually sustainability, if you think about it, it's about taking a step back and looking at the whole process and giving it like an efficiency check. And this is where the whole savings part comes. So there was that client, they are an industrial client, and we were working on they needed to have a quick report because their investment was upcoming, and they needed to have like the right look for the board meetings, and this is why they were focusing on the wins. So we had like a very basic ESG dashboard. It was something that was done on like a basic Excel sheet, nothing complicated. And we trained the internal team and had like a mini materiality assessment. And the main findings were that across the floor, we discovered that because you have like disruptions when it comes to the production process, people, they just jump up and like they create a diversion to the electricity supply, the water pump, and so on, and just to save the situation so that the production line does not stop when the other equipment failure. But when the issue is resolved, the engineers don't always have the time to go back and fix it. And we basically found a rerouting on one of the major water pumps in the plant. And we didn't know why this rerouting was happening, and when we tracked it down, it was pointless, and it was just dropping the efficiency of the pump to a very, very low number. It was fixed in no time, and it led to like a 10% savings in the water amount, because this was one of the major pumps working in the station. And even the electricity bills was downsized by around 14%, if I recall the numbers correctly. And another thing that was very simple and basic, that we helped cut the electricity use even further by just optimizing the working hours. So they have people all the time around on the floor, and not all the regions on the floor are working, but the electricity is on across the whole industrial floor. So we just had to create a little bit of very small fixes, and it led to a huge savings, whether on the electricity bill or on the water bill. And definitely, um, like, this quick win looked nice for the board, and at the same time it gave like the team working on the sustainability a push start, that like in no time they found numbers, they found savings. And it wasn't like disruptive to the team. We didn't install equipment or force them to change the way that we're working. It was just looking on the process and seeing what was out of scope. So I think it's just like keep it clear and keep it simple, and listen to the people, because they're the ones who are in touch mostly with the process, and they will definitely know where is like one or two issues, and this is like where you can just go and hunt after it when you're looking for a quick win in ESG.
Yeah, so ice breaking with the local insiders is something very much important, and I think like
Yes.
this is a major takeaway for all the practitioners who are listening to this session. And every segment, every industry is a different experience. You have to see your entry points. You have to mend your ways. You have to match the frequencies within the internal auditing team. Where to start from? You can like there could be you can start off with the easy ones, and then and gradually start building upon your reporting, or keep filling your matrices from where the management is comfortable to start from. So Asisa, since like you are also looking into this perspective, so how do you think that without a push from the regulators, certain practices could be adopted? As Zakia and other colleagues, Amira has also mentioned that encouragement is also one of the way to bring inertia and momentum in the market for quick adoption. So since you are from the academia side, so how you're nurturing the students, because today's students would be tomorrow's ESG auditors. So with this buzz line, what message would you be giving to the students while they go in the field and practice?
I said that it's a very important aspect you referred. Actually, the ESG is not going to an optional choice, since the buyers, the regulatory bodies, they are pushing, and at the end of the day, industry have to follow this. Otherwise, they will be out of the market. This is very cunning emerging statement. The students are so well connected with the market. As you know that now students are not waiting for the completion of their degree programs. They are already engaged with in market via online sourcing, and they are also providing the local services, and the all efforts so far made by the government is developing a tremendous awareness among the youth. And in our academia side, we are also in continuous process of improving the curricula in alignment to global requirement. So there is no question to say that it is an optional choice for the industry if they want to compete and remain in the industry. So obviously, you are right. Being a academia, we are putting our best effort, and we are connecting with the industry. So the youth, when graduate from the university, their employability must be multiplied by number of times. So you are well aware of with the RIFA, since your organization is engaged with us as well, and you know that you witness that we are eager for the employability, and for the employability and sustainability. ESG is a key source for the success and the competitive edge of our alumni and graduates on others.
Yeah. So I think like these are like very optimistic points, which Amira has just mentioned. You also mentioned a bright future ahead. I'll be like going towards the summing up of the discussion, and uh, uh, the the session is also going live on our YouTube channel as well, and the questions definitely would be referred to our speakers as well down the line. And like I this brings to sort of I can say I wish I could have continued. It's a very interesting session as we are gaining the momentum and motivation is very high. So I'll just put this question to Ms. Zakia, that what next from ISO, like from your committee perspective, would you be looking towards integration with climate transition planning under IFRS 2, one thing to prepare in 2026. Zakia, what would be your perspective on that from the ISO platform?
So I think there's some exciting news that will be coming from ISO within the next 1 month time. So I would say stay tuned to some of those announcements that you're going to be seeing. And I think those types of announcements, I'm not at liberty to say right now, but I think they're going to be significant globally in making things easier for the market. And all of the organizations are talking to each other. So we're in contact with SBTI, we're in contact with GHEP, and there's the recognition across the board on the role of standards and help driving climate action, especially with how regulation or political will can change based on whatever the prevailing geopolitical circumstances are. And I think everybody knows the how that has changed over the last couple of years. And I think what we're also seeing is new leadership emerge. And I think one of the beauties of being in an international system is when there is leadership by any one country or any organization, it pulls up the industry. So I think that's one of the exciting parts of working in ISO. I think one of the focus, the big picture question would be to stay tuned over the next month for some of the announcements that you're going to see coming out. Apart from that, I think there's also a huge focus on making sure that the next generation of standardization experts are getting involved with international systems, including the ISO systems. And I want to flag that in case any of your viewers are professors in universities, or we've got a younger generation that's watching as well. I think what we are seeing, and it's been a major focus for me, is challenging our own work methods and our own approaches and our own assumptions with a younger generation that is using digital technology, AI, to be able to unpack insights faster than individuals who 30 years ago may have done a PhD and spent 5 or 6 years doing it. But what they did 30 years ago with their PhD can now be done in the span of a couple of minutes. And I think there's going to be a shake-up and a questioning of our traditional ways of working, our traditional thresholds that we've used about engagement of individuals. And for a younger generation, I think there's going to be space for you at the table and for you to come in as equals at the table instead of the prevailing assumption that an expert needs to have had 20 years of experience. Because I think that there is huge value and potential in a younger generation that is using technology faster and very intuitively compared to individuals who may have been practicing 40 or 50 years but have not kept up that particular skill. So I am excited about also those potential changes that certainly I'm advocating for, but I think we're going to see them in the system as well.
Yeah, well noted, and that is something you can say. We have to unlearn many old things to learn new things as well, and to adapt ourselves to the technologies and ever evolving software tools. With this, I also must appreciate the ISO interventions in terms of making your publications more infographics, bringing more infographics into it, funny storylines, art stories, because that's a universal language. And this is what ESG Nexus is also looking into in this series of webinars, to bring in international experts, local experts, regional experts, and blend the cross flow of information, because ultimately it's everybody is doing the same thing, but the way of doing or methodology or technique could be different in certain ways, but at the end of the day, objective and desire is the same, destination is the same. So
and
with this, yeah, please.
Sorry, one thing I would add, Asad, that I think is also really important is I think technology has also flattened the world where excellence comes from any country. So it doesn't matter what the history is of a country, excellence can come from anywhere in the world and have an impact anywhere in the world. And I think that's really important to remember, especially for a younger generation from developing countries. If we look at our youth leadership group, the ones that ended up securing positions to go to some of the international conference, they were all developing country students, not because we favor developing countries, but because they rose to the top and they were excellent in the work that they produced and in the insights that they generated. So I think that's one of the other exciting elements of technology is it really has flattened the world. So any country can demonstrate excellence and lead the world. Oh, you're on mute, Asad.
Oh, yeah, 30 seconds each for Amira and Asif Saab. Speak your heart out.
So, just keeping it brief, just be genuine about your sustainability effort. Forget about the 3 letters, the 4 letters, and all these complex things. We're here to make impact. This impact is not just for the planet, it's actually money saving. And we have to always remember sustainability is people, planet, and profit. Because if you don't speak money, you won't get the high board on board. So just be genuine about the efforts. Try to be realistic and forget about all the marketing fluff and the PR stunts, and just work on what is really the issue and have the concrete numbers with a very transparent disclosure. And this is where you will basically go.
Thank you.
As
Asif
for
Saab,
my
your turn.
yeah, thank you. As if, for the context of ESG and any standards implementation, I would suggest to localize without lowering the bar. Translate policies, scale cost for SMEs, never compromise on reporting integrity. Actually, the reporting is very key element, and the reporting integrity is very sensitive. There is no greenwashing, no shortcuts for the application and implementation of these standards with their true letter and spirit. Uh, Take a little step towards the larger goal, and the success will come in few days. So it's a journey. Day by day, we need to improve towards the ultimate objective. And through these all efforts, the world seems to be a global village. Thank you.
Thank you, Asif Saab. And I think I must thank once again all the speakers from ESG Nexus platform, our core consortium partners, Global Tech Innovation, the Brown Network, and IFRS Lab. And we will be coming up shortly in continuation to this series with more success stories and more enlightening experts. And that is something, the synergy is the key to it. And it also brings one thing in my mind for closing on a funny note, that remember ESG isn't just environmental, social, and governance. It's it also means everyone should go home now with greener ideas and lighter footprints. So Tata and bye bye, and see you
Well,
soon then. Take care.
see you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think recording a live reading has finished. Sure.